Tonight on The Late Debate, how your council could be millions of pounds worse off. A big change to the way money is carved up is leaving town halls struggling to balance the books and the prospect of higher council tax.
It's going to be absolutely enormous. It's going to be £83 million cuts over the next 3 years.
Also tonight, what did we learn from this year's party conferences, and are voters really listening? And the government's got itself another new train set, but how can it make Britain's most reliable line any better? Hello and welcome to The Late Debate. There's a lot to worry about in town halls across London as councils face the prospect of millions being wiped from their budget. A big shake-up in the way government funding is shared out is due to come into force next year. Labour says the Fair Funding Review will increase spending overall, but councils have done their own sums and face a big financial headache.
All the things that the government talk about, best start in life, well, who delivers that? We do. Economic growth, getting people into jobs. Who helps them? We do. All those things are going to have to be up in the air because the depth of these cuts is so huge.
Well, there are elections in May 2026, so we're just a few months away from that, and most of these boroughs that are going to lose out are Labour controlled, and against that backdrop, some of them are very marginal. Westminster and Wandsworth are very marginal politically. So it's not good news for the Labour boroughs in inner London.
Joining me now to discuss that are my guests this week. From Labour, the MP for Stratford and Bow, Uma Kumaran. For the Conservatives, the MP for Bromley and Biggin Hill, Peter Fortune. And for the Liberal Democrats, the Esher and Walton MP, Monica Harding. Welcome all of you. Peter, this is supposed to mean that the outer London boroughs get more money. Is that going to be the case in Bromley?
No, I mean, I've seen that line used. This has to be taken in the context of the pressure that all local authorities are under and have been under increasing pressure for years. And this goes, for Bromley in particular, this goes back to, 1997. Since then, we've had our funding cut by about a third.
We heard from Elizabeth Campbell there at Kensington and Chelsea. They stand to lose £83 million, they reckon, every year. Monica, this is particularly affecting London, but in Surrey, you're also under pressure, aren't you, the councils?
Huge pressure, and I think the projected loss of income or spending power for Surrey under these new proposals is about minus 13%. So that's on top of, in a year where the debt has risen by 50%, and in a year also where our council tax has gone up by 5%. So there's only one way this is going to go. More services are going to be cut or council taxes are going to go up.
Uma, your Labour council Newham reckons it'll be £10 million a year better off. How is this fair funding?
This is about levelling up the entire country, and levelling up means London also getting its fair share. And Newham in East London has some of the most acute housing challenges. We've got severe deprivation and a lot of need, and this is taking that into account and making sure that it gets its fair share.
You say London will be better off. Overall, the London councils reckon they're going to lose almost £750 million.
It's important to note this is still under review, and MPs like me, I can only speak for kind of a London contingent of MPs. We are making our case to make sure that we get our fair share, and we'll be fighting for that.
But it's the fair share that's the interesting point. So if you look at somewhere like Bromley, I think we have the second lowest funding per head across all the boroughs. So if we had the average amount of funding, we as a council, Bromley Council, would be £18 million better off if we had the average funding.
Peter, I actually looked into how much Outer London was receiving. Do you know what the percentage is?
Go on, surprise me.
15% increase, and you didn't even get that under the Conservatives. So Outer London's actually doing quite well out of this.
No, not at all. But it's also the pressures, because the pressures of housing out there, SEND costs, are all compounding over years. And like I said right at the beginning, it's years of poor funding going back to 1997.
Isn't it true that the formula for calculating this is out of date?
Of course it's out of date, but also, to take your point about levelling up, you don't level up by levelling down. And in a case, if the government wants to work out why it's so unpopular, it's because people open their front doors and what's in front of them makes them feel that the public services aren't working and they're not getting what they're paying their tax for.
I think what Peter and Monica have forgotten that the coalition government they were the architects of austerity. I worked in local government. I worked in an inner city London council in 2010. That was the beginning of the worst of these cuts. And yes, it has been a really tough situation.
This is always the default answer for everything. And like I said, and I tried to be objective here, right? I didn't say it was just one government going all the way back to 1997. I think we can agree, those of us that have worked in local authorities, that we haven't had sufficient funding. And we're not hearing answers from the current government about how they're going to fix it.
Look, we all agree that we want our councils to be fully funded, but we can't ignore what's happened over the last 14 years. All of us are making the case. Look, levelling up means levelling up every part of this country. Hopefully you'll be making the case just like I have been
I'm making the case, if you gave us average funding, we'd be £18 million better off.
Uma, most of the inner London boroughs that are going to be worse hit by this are Labour. This is going to cost Labour votes at the borough elections in May, isn't it?
This is a really tough situation for local government and local councils. And like I said, Labour MPs across London are making our case to the government. We are fighting for our fair share. There's a lot of need in inner London. Everybody always says, oh, London gets more money than not. But the level of need in London is huge. And we are making our case to the government.
Is there a fairer system than council tax?
Well, first of all, we need to, instead of tweaking and reallocating the pot, you need to make the pot bigger. You can't cut where there's been so many cuts already. As you have said, that the local authorities have been cut and our children are suffering. We need to get the kids off the street, back into the youth services, those discretionary funds that have been completely slashed. And you can't put debt upon debt. It's simply unsustainable.
Well, why didn't the coalition government look at stuff like this? And we got the old band back together again.
So
why
how will
wasn't
you
this
make it better?
Why were the Lib Dems not saying this 10 years ago, 14 years ago? We should be all making the case for why our councils deserve proper funding.
Of course, it's not just councils facing a squeeze, because Scotland Yard has announced just 2 police stations in London will have front counters which are open at night. The Commissioner said today that the Met was rapidly shrinking.
By the end of this year, we'll have shrunk by 3,300 officers and staff. 1,600 in the last 2 years, 1,700 more this year. That's difficult in an organisation of 40,000, and that's led to some very difficult choices.
Uma, the Mayor promised in his manifesto that every London borough would have a police station open 24 hours. It's not happening.
The funding situation in London is really, really catastrophic. We've been debating this already. The front counter closures are a problem for some areas. My constituency, we've had one of ours saved, which I'm really pleased about. On the other hand, one of mine's had reduced hours. I've spoken to both of our borough commanders since this news came out. They're confident that they've still got the level of operation that they need to keep us safe. This is also reflecting the changing nature of policing. I'd rather have police out on the streets than sitting behind counters.
So I used to be at the London Assembly and I used to sit on the committee and we would ask about police funding. And Sadiq Khan, you used to work with Sadiq Khan, so you know the way he operates. He would say that the government, we're a Labour government, they would get sufficient funding. Do you think this Labour government has given sufficient funding to the Met?
I think we're getting the money that we need, but I think...
Do you think that they've got enough money?
Look...
If they've got enough money, why are they closing front counters?
Were you asking Boris Johnson this same question when he did a £1 billion real terms cut for policing in London? We haven't got the level of...
You can't keep reaching back into history.
Monica, I mean, Surrey's not immune from this, is it?
No, absolutely not. And I go out with my police officers and they are so frustrated that they can't deliver the neighbourhood policing that they want to, despite doing a brilliant job, because the money and the funding is not there in order to do it. So of course we need to fund our police better. Our public deserve it, and it is not enough to go back to history. The question is what the government is going to do about it.
Just a very quick question. At what point does the Labour government and Labour supporters say we stop blaming it on the previous administration?
I mean, the Tories blamed it on Labour for the entire 14 years they were in power. We have inherited
14 years of blame still to come.
But no, it's not that. There's a serious point, Simon. We have inherited a catastrophic situation here with the economy. The IFS have backed the £22 billion black hole that we've inherited. That's an independent audit on that money. We have inherited a dire situation.
OK, well, let's talk about how your message is resonating with voters, because the party conferences have packed up for another year. But what did we learn, and will they change the way anyone votes? We've got a vision of national renewal from Labour, while the Tories promised to axe stamp duty and the Lib Dems pledged to rescue the NHS. But the opinion polls barely shifted, and next year's local elections will be a real test as reform breathes down their necks.
We're speaking to residents. There'll be the odd person that says that they're interested in reform and what they've got to say. But what we do is make sure we tell them what we're doing as councillors and showing the benefits of having a Labour council.
What I believe is that the Conservative Party and Reform are two sides of the same coin. We should be working together. We shouldn't be fighting each other. We are right of centre. And what we don't want is more socialism.
Has Keir Starmer done enough to buy himself time?
I think the message from conference was our plan for renewal for the country. Absolutely, we have talked about how we are going to renew our streets, making our streets safer, making sure our hospitals are fully funded, making sure we've got a plan for house building. Sure Start centres reopening, breakfast clubs, a school, a library in every school. The list goes on.
So why haven't the polls shifted?
I'm not looking at the opinion polls. I mean, I think the fixation with daily opinion polls is quite destabilising, and I don't understand it. But what I am interested in is the message that the Prime Minister delivered at this conference. He had a really decisive message to Nigel Farage and to Reform and those seeking to sow division. Sad to say, some colleagues in Peter's party as well, those who are looking to stoking up tensions. And he pushed back and he said Britain is a place where everybody, no matter who you are, should be safe, and push back on the racist
Monica,
narratives.
one of the takeaways from your conference was the question that keeps coming back, is Ed Davey a serious politician?
Well, I think you're talking about the stunts, and what I would say
he arrived with a marching band.
He did, and showed good patriotism. But look, Ed Davey is somebody who resonates with the public. He shows he's authentic, he's relatable, he shows that he can have a laugh. But at the same time, there are very, very serious messages there that we are putting forward about a vision for the country and how we can change things for the better.
Did Kemi Badenoch do enough?
I think so. I think certainly after the speech there was a real energy, and the feedback I've had from members and activists have been that they can really see the path forward now. So there was setting out a credible plan to grab control of the financial situation, lower taxes, and especially, as was said right at the intro here, the policy announcement about stamp duty and removing stamp duty, which is going to help young people onto the ladder, it's going to help pensioners downsize, help people move closer to work. I mean, this could save people as much as sort of £18,000. It's a very exciting policy.
You're trying to protect the party's future, but anyone turning up at the conference, your delegates, they were confronted by images of Margaret Thatcher.
It was the great woman's 100th birthday on Monday, and I think we will never stop celebrating her and her achievements. She grabbed hold of a country that was in trouble and she put it on the right track, which is exactly what Kemi's going to do.
And a look of disdain on your face there.
I mean, earlier they were saying we can't keep going back to history, and they're going back 100 years. So which one is it?
He asked me the question, I answer a question because I'm a Conservative.
Can I just ask you about reform? Uma's talked about what Keir Starmer said. A member of the London Assembly defected to Reform at the start of the party conference. Not exactly the biggest name in politics, but how worried are you about the threat from Reform, particularly somewhere like Bromley, where in next year's elections?
Yeah, so you have to understand why people are frustrated and why they want to look for alternatives. It's our job as Conservatives to set up what we're going to do as a future Conservative government, which is why I'm really pleased to see Kemi focusing on the economy, really pleased to see her talking about aspiration and hope, and that's going to be our focus. We're not going to obsess about reform like they did at the Labour conference.
Is there any sign of reform in your part of the world, Isha and Walton?
There is signs of reform everywhere, and I was interested to see your colleagues say that Reform and the Conservatives are two sides of the same coin. And I think what was interesting, you asked whether the polls actually move. After the Liberal Democrat conference, the Liberal Democrats overtook the Conservatives in polls. So I think it does make a difference. When people hear our policies, they like them, and it shows in the polls.
So I think when people are talking about the similarities, they're talking about getting a grip on immigration, smashing the gangs, which was supposed to be Keir Starmer's big achievement, which hasn't happened. It's about community. It was about bringing back hope and aspiration. So I can understand why people see similar messages. What I'm saying is, as a member of the Conservative Party with a new leader, I think we've got a future that we could be proud of.
Just on reform, you've got the borough elections which we've talked about. In places like Barnet and Wandsworth, which were Tory, do you think reform will be more of a threat to the Conservative trying to win them back, or you trying to hold on to them?
I think we should take the threat of reform seriously. There is a real division that they are seeking to show in Britain, and ignoring them isn't a good thing. And Peter, look, I disagree. I think we should all take it seriously. Social cohesion and having a country that we don't see these marches on the streets and we don't see our communities divided. We should all be putting our best foot forward and making the case for why you can lead a Britain, whatever party it is. We cannot have a country where we are seeing tens of thousands of people taken to the streets, marching and scaring people. We should be taking the threat of reform seriously.
Why don't you think the polls have shifted?
Well, actually, there's a poll out this afternoon which puts the Conservatives back in second place. I think Labour are now tied with the Greens in third. But you're right. You know,
where's that?
It came out this afternoon.
Right.
I just looked at it as I was coming in. But you're right. The polls shift and move. The most important thing to do, which is what Kemi did at the conference, which is set out the policies, talk about how you're going to deliver it, and offer an alternative for the future. Because at the moment, the country is suffering with an awful government.
But you have talked about reform in Bromley. Do you think Bromley will stay Conservative in May?
Well, we're going to fight very, very hard to do it. Bromley is an efficient council. It's well run. It's still a place that people are proud to live in. So we'll be out knocking on doors as we are every weekend.
And the Lib Dems will hopefully, in your case, will be looking to hang on to the councils in London, but it's quite a tough ask for them to take more, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely not, actually. If you look at the general election last year, the Liberal Democrats in Surrey took 6 of the 11 seats.
But in London, where the elections are, I mean, what other ones can you take? Possibly Merton, but only with a good win behind you.
I think that Liberal Democrats has been seen as a real alternative to the current government and also the failing Conservative Party, and an absolute alternative to reform, so I think we'll do well.
Will you hang on to Westminster?
I'm concentrating on East London, Simon. I haven't paid attention.
You presumably will be campaigning in some of those
absolutely. Look,
those seats that are
I've just come from
councils.
my constituency this morning. We are not taking anything for granted.
Even in Newham. OK, well, now Labour confirmed at its party conference that more commuter rail lines would be run by the government. Next year, Thameslink, Great Northern, Great Western and Chiltern will be nationalised. Potential benefits include investment and control over fares, but there could also be a cost to the taxpayer. This week, Britain's most punctual operator, Greater Anglia, became the latest to switch over to government control.
So I understand that everyone wants an affordable public transport system. I can't promise to bring ticket prices down. Got to get the balance right between what fare payers are contributing and what taxpayers are contributing as well, because we do need to have a financially sustainable railway.
Umar, I suppose if the Transport Secretary can't answer the question, you're not going to be able to tell us when we're going to get cheaper fares and better trains.
Look, I'm quite excited about this, a really radical part of getting Great British Railways even more into reality. This is making a big difference already in Stratford and Bow. It comes through my constituency, connects you up. If you want to travel to Romford, you can be there in half the time. If you want to go to Norwich or Ipswich, you know, this is the way to do it. And it's putting passengers first, not private companies.
But Greater Anglia is the most punctual train company in Britain, we're told. Does it need to be taken over?
I think the British public want to see the services that we use come back in-house, and this is part of that. And look, already half of our national railways are coming back into public ownership, so that's great.
Monica, South Western Railway, I think, is the line that you're on. Now, you were the first to be renationalised. Is it better?
Well, we were promised a new dawn. It was a bit of a false start. South West Rail is actually the opposite of what I'm hearing about Anglia, in that it has the highest number of delays and cancellations of any of the operators that are going into London. So we're still waiting for the new dawn to happen. There is something to be said with bringing track and train together so that one can't blame the other, as happened in the past. But I think there needs to be a really, really ambitious plan. So, for example, a station, Hersham Station, my constituency, it's an absolute wreck. It's pulling people through one of the busiest train stations, and somebody put their foot through the platform last summer. It still hasn't been repaired. So I think there needs to be a real look at the investment in the railways and at the prices. My constituents are paying far, far more for far, far less.
Peter, South Eastern, which is the company that serves your constituency, has actually been under government control for a while, because it was renationalisation. It was taken over. Yeah. So you know what it's like to have civil servants in charge of the trains.
And you can see, and so I think this is the point, and I think you really hit the nail on the head when you started it, is that when something wasn't working like South Eastern, somebody steps in and starts to get it back on track, if you'll excuse the pun. And so South Eastern is now progressing. But in the case where the railway is working really well, why on earth would you want to nationalise it? If you nationalise something like that, you've got to take the money from somewhere else. So you're taking the money out of schools, you're taking the money out of health, you're taking the money out of defence. What's the point? But it was interesting because you said what the public want is that they want to own these organisations. The public don't want that. They want stuff to work. Wanting it to be in public control, that's ideology.
No, I think the public want to see efficient public services, and they want to see the money that these public services raise go back into public services, not into private profits.
But when money's tight and there's pressure on the health service and on education, isn't it easy for a chancellor to say, if we're going to cut the money being spent on the railways?
No, I think that's look. These are all different pots. That the health, the public services, education, they're all part of different pots. This is about making sure that our public services work for people, not for private companies.
Are you convinced that if the railways get the begging bowl out, that they'll be high up?
Well, this particular railway is working.
List?
This particular railway is working. Taking it back into public control is about ideology, and that's it.
Do you like the idea of public ownership?
I like public services working in the most efficient way they can.
While we're just on the subject of commuters and trains and railways, and you may be aware that the tube strike, which happened a few weeks ago, has led to a revised pay offer, which could see tube drivers earning, in 3 years' time, at the end of the 3-year settlement, £80,000 a year for a 4-day week. Is that a good use of public money?
It's a reward for striking, isn't it? Goes to show it worked.
What do you reckon, Uma?
I'm not going to begrudge a union that has negotiated good salaries for their staff, but what I do not want to see is strikes that bring London to a standstill, because it affects all our constituents. You know, my constituents can't get to work. They don't want to see that happen. So I just want to see both sides at the table agreeing a deal and getting on with it.
Do you think voters are going to find it hard to stomach tube drivers earning 80k?
I think what my constituents find hard to stomach is the price hikes in rail fares. So an average season ticket from my constituency into London each year, if it's projected, price rises are projected to go up another 5.8%, another £200, that brings it up from £3,200 to £3,400 a year. People cannot afford that, and they're getting a worse service.
And some of this is the compounding of the irresponsible and politically motivated fares freeze that Sadiq Khan put in place.
Was it irresponsible?
We want our constituents to be able to afford to commute, and freezing fares absolutely is that we've had a cost of living crisis, in part, but the architects of the Tories over here, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that commuters aren't feeling the pinch.
Freeze fares, put up wages, nationalise companies. This is all sounding a bit 1970s, isn't it?
Oh, you want to go back 100 years, so it's only, there's 40 years.
Peter, just very briefly, going back to the point you were just making and what I was saying earlier, isn't that the whole problem of rail fares going up is that if the government needs to cut money, it'll say stick the prices up?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Of course they will. I mean, the Chancellor's got very few levers to pull now, which is why we're hearing some terrible things about things like capital gains tax, etc., taxing family homes.
OK, well, topics that I'm sure we'll come back to before and after the budget, but for the moment, that's all we've got time for. Thank you to my guests, Uma Coomran, Peter Fortune and Monica Harding. We're back next month. Until then, goodbye and thank you for watching. Thank you very much indeed.